Um, and if others join us, they'll just have to join us after we've started. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Christmas is just around the corner, and actually we're going to be talking about our very last assignment, which I'm sure is very good news for everybody. Um, you should also have some time to catch up on anything that you have to redo or anything of the sort. And I'm going to talk today about um, it's actually technically our 8th assignment, but it's assignment number 9 because we did skip that one assignment. It's on factor analysis, and I have to say it's complicated. So please give yourself time to do it. You do have 11 days to get it done, and hopefully I will give you some of the tools today that you need to get it done. The actual assignment is not in a book. It's on Moodle under um, the factor analysis exercise, and there are 2 different things that are there. One is the actual instructions for doing the assignment. It's another one of Ray Newton's assignments that I'm borrowing. And the other thing that is there is the database that you will need to do the assignment. If for any reason you're having trouble opening that database, it took me I had a little difficulty at first, so please get in touch with me right away. Actually, check it as soon as possible to make sure that you're able to access it. And if for some reason you get a lot of complaints about what's on Moodle, I will send those of you who let me know a copy of the file, because I do have a copy of the file, and it's open right here on my computer. This is the variable view, and the data view is this one. This is actually data looking at the conflict tactic scale, which is a widely used instrument to assess the amount of domestic violence that exists in a relationship. So it's kind of fun to be doing analyses, at least I hope it'll be fun to do analyses with something that is in common use and is an important contribution to the literature on domestic violence. The assignment requires you to analyze the data in this data file. The items that you really want to be looking at, I mean, there is some demographic data that's not going to be particularly relevant, but starting at item number 11, which is HF2L101, which is also known as item L101. Trying to open this. Nope. Yeah, I guess I could move all of this out to show you the name of it. But basically, you'll notice that the items are the odd items, L101, L103, L105, L107, and so forth. So those are the items that we are going to be looking at for this assignment through L177. So they're all the odd items in on the conflict tactics scale. If you want to see what the whole scale looks like, it is actually included as part of the instructions that we're doing the assignment, so it has every single item in there. And you'll notice that the even items are descriptive of what the partner did to the respondent, and the odd items, which we'll be looking at, are what the respondent did to his or her partner. And so we'll be looking uniquely at what the person has done to his or her partner. And what we'll be doing is a factor analysis, because one of the things that you may already know is that if you have a number of independent items or individual items like this, it's very difficult to do any kind of statistical analysis with it. You first have to essentially create a scale, which is one of the things that you can do with factor analysis, is to take a number of items which hopefully are not too disparate. I mean, in this case, they all have to do with behaviors that are related to interpersonal violence. And so with factor analysis, what we're really wanting to see is to see whether there is a way in which the variables are related to each other into what is known as factors. And the process of factor analysis really helps us to see which variables kind of go together. And the factors themselves are the grouping of the variables that measure some common entity or construct. So when we run the factor analysis and we get information, what we're looking to see is how many different factors are encompassed in this set of items. If you think about many of the commonly used psychological tests, many of those tests have scores, and then they have subscores. Well, in essence, the subscores were probably created by doing a factor analysis to see which of the items go together into disparate entities, which the test developers call subscores. But in factor analysis lingo, we call those factors. So this is basically a statistical procedure to allow us to see whether there are subscales or groupings of items within a larger set of items. And once we've created those groupings, our task is to really name them, to look at what it is that they have in common, what is it that they measure. So the assignment asks you to take this database, and Ray has some very specific instructions about how to do the factor analysis, which are essentially screenshots and show you exactly what options you want to click on and what you want to have made available to you. I'm going to give you a little bit more information because as I always do these assignments after, before you all do them so that I can make sure that they work. There are a couple little things that I'm going to suggest you do which will help you in the final analysis and doing the assignment. But first of all, start with Ray's instructions and the screenshot that he's given you for doing the factor analyses, because they will help you tremendously. So, for example, let me see if I can open the assignment for you. If I have it somewhere nearby, I think this is it. So here's the actual factors, the conflict tactic scale with the actual items that are in it. And here, whoops, where'd it go? Oh, it's not coming up very fast. It's not giving me the screenshot that's here somewhere. I don't know what's happening here. Got blank things. Well, here we go. Here's something. Yeah, I know, but okay, here we go. Thank you, Liliana. I'm not very patient, am I? Okay, so the very first screenshot, which is still not coming. Oh, there it is. The very first screenshot, once you get into the overall program, which you access by clicking on, actually, I'll show you. I'll go back to this other thing for 1 second. So you're going to go into Analyze, and you're going to go into Dimension Reduction and Factor. That's where you will find the factor analysis program. And the different screenshots that I'm going to go back to now are basically telling you you're going to have to go into Extraction, Rotation, and Options, what it is that you want to highlight to do the analysis. You'll notice here that I've got all of the items moved over there, all of the odd numbered items that are part of the conflict tactic scale and that comprise the behaviors of the respondent towards his or her partner. So in order to do a factor analysis and see whether there are subgroupings of items in this set of items, we're going to have to do the factor analysis, which again is accessed the way that I've just described. So I'm going to go back now to the screenshot, if I could find it without too much difficulty. So here we go. So once you're in that program, and these items have also been moved over by Ray in his screenshot, you're going to want to click on Options, and here are the options that he wants you to do. Make sure that you type in the number 0.4 under suppress absolute values less than, because I believe it's set as 0.1, but I am not sure that's what I'm saying is accurate. But make sure you do set it to 0.4. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to click on the rotations button. And under rotation, you want to put direct Obermann and rotated solution and 100. Some of these might be the default option. But essentially what that means is when you do a factor analysis, there are a number of different ways that you can describe the kind of solution you want. And most of these involve some kind of rotation, which are ways of mathematically changing individual aspects of the data without changing the way in which all the data relates to each other. And the two basic kinds of rotations that you can have are essentially orthogonal rotations in which the factors, you believe that the factors are not correlated with each other, or oblique rotations in which you believe the factors are correlated with each other. So in this particular instance, we're going to be choosing the direct oblumen, which is which is an oblique rotation. And again, it's the one that Ray wants you to use to do this particular problem, but it comes from an understanding that it is most likely that the factors that will come out of this analysis are going to be correlated with each other. And if that makes some sense, if you think about the kinds of items that are in the scale, which all describe some behavior that the person is doing that is abusive at the least and violent at the most against the partner. So it makes some sense that those would be things that would be related statistically. So that's why you're picking an oblique rotation. In this case, it's a direct oblumen rotation. And then, oops, I lost this? Okay, and then the third thing we're going to do is to describe the extraction. There are different ways of running factor analysis. We're going to use the principal components method, so that needs to be checked here. And the other thing that Ray wants you to do is to extract 5 factors, not more than 5 factors. And you'll see later on that one of his questions relates to what's the impact on your process of having done that, and then change, I think the default option is 100 or something, they change that to 25 down here. So the only thing I would add to that, and I'm going to, it's not indicated on here, but in addition to what is checked on here, I also strongly recommend that you click on screen plot right here. I can't do it because I'm just showing you Ray's screenshot, but it's not clicked, it's not checked in here. Please do that because you'll see later on that there's a question in which you'll need that information, and rather than having to go back and rerun it, do it right at the outset. You'll have the data right there. So those are the screenshots that you need to follow, and if you do that, you should get most of what you need, with one exception, which I'll come back to. But I want to stop and answer questions, because I know this is kind of conceptually a little bit, it's a very different approach to anything we've been doing, and I want to make sure that you understand why we're doing it, and then we'll come back and talk about what we do with the output when we get it. So let me open this up for questions. If you're muted and you want to ask me a question, you're going to have to unmute yourself because I can't hear you. I mean, well, I'm going to get out of this screen. Oops, out of this one too. All right, I've got to get back to something that is data for you all. I'll just go back to this. Okay. All right. Well, that's the part that I was going to talk about later. So, Liliana, that's a great question. Hold on to it because you're going to have to run it. Yeah, that's the bottom line answer. You're going to have to run those reliabilities, but and then that will have to be a separate set of commands in addition to what I've shown you so far. But if you run the particular options that I've shown you and that is described in Ray's description of the assignment, you will have the data that you need for most but not all of the assignment. And I'll come back to the other parts as well. So far, I just want questions, if you would, that are more conceptual questions about what is this factor analysis stuff that we're doing here and why are we doing it. And maybe there aren't questions out there. Okay, well, I guess if there aren't questions, then let me turn to what you need to do once you've run the analysis. So one of the things that is specified in here, and I just want to draw your attention to it, on the assignment, it tells you to assign the values of 7 and 9 to missing values, which I did before I ran the analysis. So you're going to have to do a recode into the same variable, and you're going to have to, and that's what I did. Whoops, I don't know why that one's there. I basically pulled up all the items that are from the scale, and I asked the SPSS to recode 7 as a sys-miss and 9 as a sys-miss, so make sure you do that, okay? I did that, and it shows up over here in my values that the missing values are 9 and 7, which I just created an 8 that was priorly assigned to missing values. So make sure you do that before you do any of your analyses. And then go through the steps that are indicated in the assignment using the screenshots, and use them exactly the way Ray did them, with one exception, which is under the, I believe it's the extraction screenshot. You, in addition to the unrotated factor solution, which is clicked on Ray's screenshot, please also click the scree plot, because you'll need that. So make sure you do that. So the process is you go through the analysis. So the steps of the analysis is what we've talked about so far. But then the next thing you need to do, and I'm going to show you some output if I can find it real fast. No, I don't want this right now. I don't want this. So I'm going to go up to here, and this is my output. Oh, wait a second. I got pages and pages of this stuff. Okay. All right. So here's where once you've done this analysis, you're going to want to print it out. And just a warning: make sure you have paper in your printer. It printed out lots and lots of pages. But essentially, what you're going to want to turn to is the pattern matrix. And the pattern matrix shows the these are the 5 components that you, or the 5 factors that you limited the analysis to. And then it shows you how much each of the variable loads on each of these components. And you'll notice that there is nothing that is below a 0.4, and that is because we actually set that as a parameter at the very beginning. So the only things that are on here are those that are loading at 0.4 or higher. And you'll notice that these first few items all load at 0.4 or higher on component 1 or factor 1. So part of your job is to look at these items and say, what do they have in common? What would I call that? And what kind of a subscale would that be? What is it really measuring? So that's one thing you need to do. Ditto for, whoops, I went too fast and too far. I'm going to go back to the pattern matrix. Make sure you look at the pattern matrix. So then for the second component, or the second factor, we've got all of these variables that load on it, 0.4 and higher. There are a few more that are further down on the page, and I just don't want to keep going back and forth. So for right now, let's just look at these. One of the things you'll notice about all of these, what they have in common, is they all are negatively loaded. So whatever that is that this represents, I burned or scalded my partner, I forced sex on my partner, I used force on partner for sex, blah, 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 blah. These are all negatively loaded. So what does this represent? Give it a name. Ditto for number 3, number 4, number 5. Okay. So, so the first part of your assignment after you've done the actual SPSS part is to describe, give a name to each of the 5 factors, give your rationale for why you've named it that, and then write the name of each factor on a sheet and list the items that are included within that factor. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Okay. Then we want you to look at, there are a number of questions that Ray asks you to attend to, so make sure you You answer those. A lot of this information is in M&V. Question number 3 specifically asks you about what's the impact of having set the loadings at 0.4 or higher. And you should be able to take a look at that and determine through looking at the, hold on one sec. Just give me a second to sort of, oh gosh, no, you know what, I'm gonna look at the printouts that I have printed out, because a lot of the pages in between give you residual correlations, and I don't want to have to keep scrolling back and forth. So let me look at the hard copy in my lab. Give me just one second. I'm not sure where that is in this output, but there is a table which describes the total variance explained. No, let me not talk about that right this second. Instead, let me talk about, hold on a second, I'm flipping through pages here. Not successfully, I might add, because there are a lot of pages in my lap. I'll be right with you guys. As I said, this is not a simple assignment, so make sure you give yourself time to just flipping through pieces of paper is a little complicated. Let me come back to that one in a second, because I want to make sure I get some of the things in there, and I don't want to keep shifting through pieces of paper to try to answer one little piece when there's so many other parts of this thing. I'll come back to number 3. But number 4 asks you to look at the criteria that Mertler and Van Atta describe as what constitutes a good factor structure. And if you look on page 244 of the M&V book, there is a description of 4 different criteria that you might use to determine whether this is a good factor structure. And if you follow what they say, they tell you on page 244 exactly what those are, and in other parts of that chapter they tell you how to determine whether the solution that you have has met the criteria that they describe on page 244. So make sure you do that. Then the next thing, and this was Liliana's question of a little while ago, regards question number 5. Run the alpha reliabilities of the items that form each of the individual factors. In other words, you've now created subscales, essentially, as I kind of hinted at earlier. And we want to know, are those subscales reliable? Well, how do you do that? Anybody have an idea about that before I answer my own question? How would you determine the reliability of the different subscales that we've now created? And again, the subscales would be created by all the items that load on factor 1 as one subscale, all the items that load on factor 2 as one of the subscales, all the items that load on factor 3 as one of the subscales. And because we've limited our solution to 5 factors, we're going to have 5 different subscales essentially. And for each subscale, we have to determine whether that subscale is reliable. How do we do that? Analyze the scale. Okay, so you're suggesting, Liliana, that we go to Analyze and that we go under the pull-down menu to Scale, and then we click on, Reliability Analysis. Exactly correct. That's exactly what you want to do. And so, and you can see that I was doing that. I can't remember now which particular subscale that was, but these were those when you print out your your solution, and you look at the pattern matrix and you see which items load on which of the factors. I think this is probably factor 5, probably the last one that I did. These were probably the items that were listed as being under factor 5. So I did this separately for each one of the subscales. So that means after you've done this, you want to reset it, get rid of that, and put in the items now for the new, for factor 2 or factor 3 or whichever one you're doing. In terms of the statistics, you want to click on scale if item is deleted and means. And then you continue. I'm just going to cancel here because I don't have anything listed anymore. But that's how you would answer question number 5, is that you'd actually go through and run a reliability analysis. And you also will get in the output, you'll get an alpha score for that particular factor. So you're going to have 5 factors, and then you can answer the question. Is that reliable? Anybody happen to know what a minimum alpha you would need for a scale that had fairly decent reliability? 0.7, exactly right. And that, if you haven't had 715A, pardon me, you may not know that. We cover that in 715A. But yes, you need a 0.7 or above reliability to have a reasonably reliable subscale. So once you've done the reliability analysis, you'll get a Cronbach's alpha for each one of those subscales, and you'll be able to tell us that, yes, subscale 1 has a Cronbach's alpha of whatever it is that is or is not reliable, and so forth and so on. So you can answer question 5 from that. So I know this sounds like a lot. It is a lot. It's fairly complicated. I will be available. Yes, I'll answer questions too in a second, but I'll be available next Monday. I'm again going to be out of town, so I'm going to be talking to you from elsewhere, and I always like to say that just in case I have computer access problems wherever I am, but I will try to make sure that, wherever I am, I do have computer access, and for some reason I don't, and I'll reschedule for after I get back into town later that week. But you'll have another opportunity to ask questions, and I really strongly recommend, if you have an opportunity to get, much of the way through the assignment, hold on just a second with that question, Liliana. You get through much of the assignment so that you can ask specific questions. So Liliana asked a question about, should you include output? In general, you always want to include output. And in general, you only want to include the output you're going to comment on. Some of you are still just giving me like a whole bunch of different output altogether. And then I'm going, okay, now, I may know what I want to do with this, but do you? So what I would prefer is you take each piece of output, but only the relevant stuff, put it in there, and then point me to what it is you want me to see. You might see, like, for example, in column 5, you will notice blah, blah, blah. And that leads me to conclude, whatever it is. So only include the output that is necessary. I should mention that as you review the 4 criteria that M&V describe as important for good factor structures, they do talk about the what's it called? Hold on a second. That's the thing that was occupying a lot of my output. Reproduced correlations, and the reproduced correlation output is the reason that I have a packet of output sitting in my hand right now, because when I printed that out, it occupies a lot of pages. Please do not include that in your assignment. Just, kind of eyeball that, summarize for me what that looks like, and answer the question. And that relates specifically to criterion number, or letter D, I believe. Let me just double check that. Yeah, letter D of on page 244 that M&V describe as important factors and important criterion for a good factor solution. And you'll notice if you flip to page 244, and they tell you very specific what it is you need. And one is the eigenvalue, the other is the variance, the third is the discrete plot, and the four is the residual. Let me start backwards. The residual, as I mentioned, is a very long, it's basically a huge correlation table. And if you were to include that, I'd have to move out of my house before I could look at all of your assignments, so don't, just eyeball it and tell us, as you look at that, whether only a few residuals exceed 0.05. And if there are several residuals that are more than 0.05, then that says something about the quality of your solution, and you can comment on it. Number 3, I mentioned earlier that in Ray's screenshot, he did not ask you to check the screen plot option. Please do check the screen plot option, because it'll allow you to answer number 3 here on page 244 about whether you have a good solution. And in terms of 1 and 2, eigenvalue and variance, I'm going to try to go back to my output here. Hopefully I could find what I want pretty fast. Give me a second now, because again I have to scroll down through a lot of stuff that isn't particularly what I want to show you. It may take a second. Oh, here we go. It's right here. So this table right here will help you answer that question, because you will notice one of the things that M&V tell you is the eigenvalues, components with eigenvalues greater than 1 should be retained. And if you look at my output here, you'll notice that there are 9 of them. 9 of these things have an eigenvalue, initial eigenvalue, of over 1. And by the way, that will also help you answer one of the other questions in here regarding number 3. Are there items in your factor analysis that have been excluded because you've been asked to suppress any items with loadings greater than 0.4? So I'll let you figure out the specifics of that, but that's a really big hint on how to answer that. But back to the point here, which is you have a solution in which you've only got 5 components because you limited yourself. And here, this tells you that 9 components would have been appropriate ones. So that also allows you to answer question 1. I mean, criterion number 1. I'm sorry, about eigenvalue that are in the M&V book on page 244. And then there's additional information about when the number of variables is less than 30 and the commonalities are 0.7. And so forth and so on. But this table will help you answer that. The second thing that this table will help you answer is whether the variance, the components that account for at least 70% of the total variance. Now, we've only got a 5-factor solution, these 5 right here, and they account for this cumulative percentage. And if the criterion is you have a good solution when you're accounting for 70% of the variance, you kind of have your answer here. So again, I'm giving you some really big hints on how to answer some of these questions. Again, it's based on the data. You want to show me your output. You want to point me to the kinds of things I'm pointing to you now so that you can show me that you really do understand why you've answered the question in the way that you have. Okay, questions, other questions? Sorry, I can't even see if there are questions because I've closed that down. Okay. Who's got a question? So again, my plan is to be, I will schedule office hours for next Monday. I'm going to be away from home, so hopefully technology will cooperate and I'll be able to access the internet without any problems from where I am, but I always like to give myself an out since I don't have much control on the internet, and if for some reason I'm unable to access the internet for whatever reason, then I will definitely reschedule I will be back in town late on Tuesday, so probably won't reschedule till Wednesday, but I will definitely reschedule. And then I will also, as per usual, um, record what we talk about so that if you're not able to join us then. But the plan is Monday, and the last time I said this and I did this, I had no problems accessing the internet, but again, I'm just trying to provide myself with an out. And hopefully you will have taken pretty seriously my recommendation that you begin this assignment so that I can answer the kinds of nitty-gritty questions, because I'm not going to have like any big thing to share with you. I'm really primarily going to be answering people's questions. So come prepared with questions, and my goal is to really help you do the assignment, and that's it. So any questions now? I'm not hearing any. Oh, here we go. All right. No questions from Liliana. How about the rest of you? It's hard to have questions when you haven't looked at this, which is really why I hope that you'll do as much of the assignment as you can. Yeah. All right, Denise. I see that you don't have any either. But I think that once you actually do the SPSS part of this and really begin to try to put together the output with the questions in the assignment, that should really help you figure out what it is that you're confused about or lost with. And I hope you all feel that as you're learning how to do this process, that I don't really see any stupid questions. They're all really good questions. And if you have a question somebody else does, yes, Jennifer, thank you for planning to start this early so you can come with questions next time. Ditto, Susanna, thank you. And I hopefully, again, I always kind of leave myself an out because I always record these, and then sometimes for whatever reason, it doesn't want to get, YouTube doesn't want to upload anything. Okay, Julianne. So hopefully I will have no problems getting this particular recording uploaded. I used to do that right away, and as I said, sometimes technology isn't cooperating, and which case I haven't been able to post things, but most of the time it has cooperated quite well. And if so, then this should be uploaded within a fairly short amount of time so you can go back and refresh your memories. And the other thing that I said at the very beginning, and several of you weren't on the call yet, and so let me just repeat it because it's important. I've posted both the assignment and the database that you need to do the assignment on Moodle under this assignment number 9. When I initially tried to open it, I had some difficulties opening the database, not the assignment there. What you have to do is I think, pretty clearly laid out there. But the database, I had some difficulty opening it, and so please try to open it as soon as possible. If for some reason you aren't stuck on that, I actually can send you the file, the database file, and I will do that as soon as I hear from you that you're having trouble. So if you wait to the last minute, that's another thing you may have trouble, you may not be able to do is open the database, and then you'll be really stuck. So that's it, guys. Have a great evening. I will talk to you all hopefully next Monday. Bye-bye. You're welcome.